This video will discuss how to beam together flag notes in simple meter to make a rhythm more legible. Okay, notes which have flags, and this is what is called a flag on a note. So this part of an eighth note, 2 flags on a 16th note, 3 flags on a 32nd note. Notes which have flags may be beamed together to make them easier to read. And the number of beams that are used should be the same as the number of flags. So here are 2 eighth notes with flags. This is 2 eighth notes with beam. So 1 beam for an eighth note, 2 beams for a 16th note, 3 beams for a 32nd note. Notes must be beamed together, however, in a manner which agrees with the time signature. Because the primary reason for beaming notes together is to make the rhythm more legible. And the most important thing that you're trying to accomplish with beaming is to show note groupings which occur on strong beats. So all notes with flags which fit on 1 beat should be beamed together, and I should say which start on 1 beat and start on the beat. So here we have a rhythm in 4/4, 2 eighth notes, beat 2 is 2 eighth notes. If we go below, here are those same 2 eighth notes beamed together, the quarter note is left alone, 2 eighth notes beamed together. Now, it is also very much okay to beam together uneven note values. So just because we have an eighth note and 2 16th notes which all fill up 1 quarter note beat, it is perfectly fine to beam those together. You notice that on this eighth note the beam goes all the way across, and then between the 2 16th notes the second beam connects between just those 2 notes. It doesn't extend over into the eighth note territory. Here is what that rhythmic pattern looks like with the 2 16th notes first. And here's an example where you have a 16th note, an eighth note, and a 16th note. Notice that the 16th beam goes halfway across, and here halfway across, and those are always going to face into the center. Just keeps it looking more tidy. But what this does is, if you look at the top rhythm, it's very difficult to discern where the beat is, and when you look at the bottom rhythm, your eye can just grab, okay, that's a beat, that's a beat, okay, quarter note alone is a beat. It makes it much easier to sight read rhythmic passages. It might be tempting to beam together like note values. So here, this is a measure from the previous example we looked at, where beat 1 is an eighth note and 2 16ths, and beat 2 is 2 16ths and an eighth note. It might be tempting to leave the eighth note alone, and 4 16th notes looks really nice together, and then the 2 eighth notes, and then putting all like note values. But what this does is obscure where the beat is. And so with the rhythm written with this type of beaming, you really can't tell where the beat is, and so therefore this is more difficult, or at least as difficult to read as this is in a sight reading situation. Another mistake which is commonly made when working on beaming notes together is never beam into a quarter note. It will actually change that quarter note into a whole note. In this top we have 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Okay, in this bottom example I beamed into the quarter note 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You don't have a complete measure because what used to be a quarter note now is an eighth note. So never beam into a quarter note, or for that matter a half note either, which is a note with a stem. The only notes which can be beamed together are those which have flags. There are certain cases when it's necessary to beam together a partial beat which doesn't start on the beat. The basic rule is beam together all notes which have flags starting on the beat, which fit within a beat. But occasionally, for instance, in 2/2 time, we have 1 beat, 2 beats, 1 beat here, and 1 beat here. Okay, there's nothing can be beamed. Half note you can't beam. 2 quarter notes, even though it would be nice if there was some way to show you that these 2 quarter notes make up 1 beat, there's no way to do it. For eighth notes, when the half note is getting 1 beat, can all be beamed together. A quarter note plus 2 eighth notes is what makes up this second beat in this measure. You cannot beam into the quarter note, but it is perfectly fine and appropriate to beam together the second half of this beat, so these 2 eighth notes can be beamed together. In other cases, it's necessary to leave a note with a flag on its own without a beat. And the most common situation for that is when we have a dotted quarter note in simple meter. So here we are again in 3/4 time, 1 beat, 1 beat, 1 beat. This is a beat and a half, 1 beat, and so forth. So the beaming, 1 beat. Beat 2, those 2 flagged eighth notes beam together. Beat 3 is a quarter note. 1.5 beats, there's nothing to beam it to. Can't beam it to the quarter note because now you have a dotted eighth note and an eighth note. In this second measure, again, we start with a dotted quarter note. We leave alone this eighth note, but we do beam these 2 eighth notes together because now we can clearly see that this is where beat 3 lies. This, when students are working on beaming exercises, this is one area where many mistakes are common, so be careful of this. You should not start a beaming group on in the middle of a beat. These two measures sound identical. If a tie is used for a beat and a half rather than a dotted quarter note, you may beam these 2 eighth notes together. If you're working on a beaming exercise and you start with a dotted quarter note, there is no reason to turn it into a quarter note tied to an eighth note. In 3/4 time or in any quarter note beat time, both of these rhythms are completely appropriate. You don't need to change either of them, but this is what they should look like. And on this slide, here are examples of commonly found note groupings which are beamed together. 2 eighth notes, eighth note, 2 16th notes, 16th, 2 eighths. These are probably the most common. Dotted eighth notes plus 16th notes also are common note groupings, and this is what they should look like. If the 16th note comes first, again, you have a little half beam here. Don't connect it all the way across, or that will look like 2 16th notes with the dot after. If the dotted eighth note comes before the 16th, then the 16th beam goes inward. And here are some less common. I guess the point of this is all of these note groupings start on a beat. They're all flagged notes, so it is very much appropriate to beam together all of these weird, wacky note groupings. They look funny. I'm glad I don't have to perform some of them, but it makes it much more clear. You can easily see there's 1 beat, there's where beat 2 is, there's beat 3, and there's beat 4. So beaming is used to help make things more clear in reading rhythm.